This is Brother Teacher. This subject here is a bit difficult for me to address in that it speaks to one of the deepest and most core values that I have as a father, a parent, and that is when you separate children, especially minors, and especially very small children from their families, from their moms and dads. And this is the case right now in the United States. What's going on in Texas, where the Mexican and Texas border meets, there has been an onslaught of seizing of people who have come over the border. But along with those adults, there were many children. And over the past several months, those numbers of children increased up to approximately 2,500 as I'm speaking, and it may be more. Now, these children, they're being held separate from their parents. They're being held in some sort of detention centers. And this has gotten the attention not only of the American people, general public, if you will, but the world. And many people have weighed in and are still weighing in on this inhumane situation. And it is inhumane. Prefix in, meaning not humane. So, what do I mean by inhumane? Inhumane is simply this: if you have a child and someone came in your home and took your child from the home, how would you feel? What would you think? What would you do? I understand immigration. I understand people in this particular case from Mexico trying to seek asylum. So they cross the border into the United States seeking asylum. I do understand that. And I also understand the so called uh, uh, zero tolerance for immigrants climbing over the border into the United States. I understand that. I get it. However, as one person made the statement, why now? Why are you collecting all of these people and separating them from their children and placing their children in some institutions, basically, here in the United States, apart from their family? I understand the so called judicial system, that these people are supposed to be going through that because they broke some alleged law, but it's not morally right. Now, I saw Donald Trump in one tweet. He made some statements, and I'm going to read those statements to you real quick, and I'm going to comment on those statements. Bear with me. This is Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. Children are being used by some of the worst criminals on earth as a means to enter our country. Has anyone been looking at the crime taking place south of the border? It is historic, with some countries the most dangerous places in the world not going to happen in the US. My response and or reply to that is this: the United States is the biggest criminal on the planet. I'll leave it there. We have over 90 something military bases in other folks' countries. So, how in the world can you say someone is violating your law, coming into your country for asylum because the conditions are better in the US as opposed to where you're coming from. When you have your military personnel, your armies, your marines, your navy, your air force supplanted in other countries. Why are you even there? So that is hypocritical in and of itself, and it is very much an arrogant statement to make. That's pretty bold, and it's inaccurate. So these people have not done anything any more wrong than what the U.S. has already done. Not to mention the fact that we legalized slavery in this country. Now you can read between the lines all of the other atrocities that happened as a result of slavery, during it and even afterwards. So that doesn't fly. Now, listen to this other thing from the Texas Tribune. What's happening with the children? I knew this before I read this. Unaccompanied minors and children separated from their parents have been taken into custody by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Some parents have told an assistant federal public defender that their children were taken immediately at the border. Others said they were separated at processing facilities. The majority of unaccompanied, undocumented children have gone to detention centers, according to the Office of Refugee Resettlement. The office tries to place children in foster homes, note foster homes, or with relatives already living in the United States. What if they don't have any relatives here? It's not immediately clear what will happen to the children once Trump signs his executive order. Some families have reported being separated for over 6 months already. Newsflash, he just signed an order saying that the children could be reunited, so to speak. That's what he said, with their families. Now, listen to this. What kind of conditions are the kids living? The shelters that have immigrant children have been accused of serious lapses in care. An investigation by Reveal and the Texas Tribune has found, in almost all cases, the federal government has continued to place children with the companies after serious allegations were raised. That's inhumane treatment already. In addition to that, allegations included failure to seek medical attention for children and inappropriate contact between children and staff. I'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a right, the United States government, to remove any child from their parents. It's easy to make these laws and these so-called rules and these executive decisions, as they call them or want to call them. It's easy to put the ink on the paper. But if someone came in the president's house and he had grandchildren, they removed his grandchildren, he would call it an act of war. And he would do something about it yesterday. So how insensitive must you be as a human being when you are a father, when you are a grandparent? How insensitive can you be to allow your system of government to remove someone else's children, especially infants and toddlers, away from their families for several weeks and even months, and then place them in a system that you created that has potential pedophiles in the system? This is all documented. So when I said, note that I said foster care, some foster situations abuse the children. Now you go figure. Would you want your children separated from you? Now I hear these people jumping on the bandwagon who have been interviewed by these media outlets And a lot of them are saying, well, they have no right to come into our country, and that they're making it worse for us, and so on and so forth. For real, they have just as much right to be in this country as anyone in this country. So let me remind you, slaves were brought here. We are the only race, or so-called race, in America that is not an immigrant. We were brought here. Our ancestors were brought here by force. So how are you going to justify someone else coming here on their own, trying to seek a better life for themselves, when our ancestors, and we are the lineage from that group of people, they were brought here under force, by force, and many of them, hundreds of thousands of them, millions of them, up until this present point, has been and were murdered. By who? The British, the French, the United States. So we need to return those children back to their families. And there is a better way to deal with this immigration issue as far as these immigrants coming into this country. This is just the top layer of this conversation. I'm not done yet. This is Brother Teacher. Let me know what you think. They need to be returned to their families. And best case scenario, send them back home. Don't put them in a foster care.